Okay. All right, everybody. We're picking up where we left off on the 3Fs. The 3Fs. Again, the 3Fs are flips, fixer-uppers, and fixers. Flips, fixers, and flixers. Flips, fixers, and flixers. So last week we ended up talking about some of the physical things that we can do to do fixer-uppers. And again, I feel the need to go over the definition of the 3Fs as we start this one, in case somebody's just picking up here in this webinar. So the 3Fs are flips. Flip, again, is something that we buy low, sell high for as cheaply as possible. We buy it as cheaply as possible. We simply turn around and put it up for sale, having done literally nothing, not done anything to the property, and we sell it for a profit. The second one is the fixer-upper. The fixer-upper being something that we buy and then we fix up. We do something to the property, we complete that process, and we sell it for a profit. That's a fixer-upper. Now, most people think like all the flip shows, the flip TV shows that you see, those are not flips, those are fixer-uppers. So a fixer-upper is something where we actually do the full work to the property that we're planning on, and then we sell for a profit. We buy it as quickly as we can, we do the work as quickly and as inexpensively as we can, and then we sell for a profit. And then the third F we're going to get to in a minute, the flixers. Those are going to be absolutely fantastic. That should change the way you look at real estate because it's an absolutely fantastic approach. A couple of really cool stories I'll share with you on flixers. So let's finish up fixer-uppers. We talked about some of the physical fixer-uppers in terms of the carpet and paint in the attics, the basements, garages, patios, carports, finishing some of those things into extra living space, square footage fixer-uppers, basement, all the things that we can do to fix up and improve properties, turning non-permitted work into permitted work, all of those fun things, taking condemned properties and remodeling them into acceptable properties. So great stuff that way. So those are the physical. Now, there's also, most people don't consider this, but there's also paper, what I call paper or conceptual fixer-uppers. There are fixer-uppers you can do to a property where you can take it from one state and fix it up to a higher state without doing any physical labor to the property. Now, I jokingly kid that a lot of people can relate to this because they aren't willing and able or don't want to do physical labor. And they don't want to direct others doing physical labor either. So this is a great one here if you opt to do this. So this is a good one. Paper or conceptual fixer-uppers. Now, I used to buy properties, and one of the things I started doing when I wanted to do something that was a little more short-term than buy a piece of property, cash flow it, and then hold it for 30 years while I paid it off, and then have an asset that's paid for with a cash flow. So I would do some things a little differently. I started doing some of the short-term stuff, and one of the first ones I did, if you remember my story, was a short-term fixer-upper that was actually a subdivision. I subdivided a small lot off the back of that house and turned that into a twin-home lot. Well, I learned that you can dramatically increase the value of a property doing paperwork or conceptual work to it. And what I mean by that is you can do zoning changes, you can do variances, you can do overlays, you can create flag lots, lot line adjustments, a lot of fun things that we're talking about here we can do on a high level without having to physically do the carpet and paint thing and remodel that way. So I wanted to talk about some of those because those fixer-uppers are fantastic. The same spreadsheets would apply, the same formula would apply on what can I buy the property for, how much does it cost to fix up in terms of one of these items here, and I'll go through these very briefly in a second. And then what can I do to sell it for as much as possible? So the part that I want to help you understand here is why a property is worth so much more. So if we go to number one here, and we use zone change. I can't tell you how many times I've done this where we've gotten some type of a zone change variance and those types of things. And I usually only seek them out when they're pretty much guaranteed or they're offered by the city or the county as a redevelopment and urban renewal infill incentive. So it's their idea. I don't like to swim upstream and change things, but I'll tell you, if you change zones, you change the value of a property. We've got a current property I'm doing with a student where we're trying to get a zone change, and the resulting zone change would be from 10 units to the acre on the property we're looking at to 20 units to the acre. So it's literally a double in acreage, doubles the value of the density of units, I should say, in the acreage. So zone change are very cool. So literally, we could call a fixer-upper. You buy a raw piece of land, you change it from one zone to the next, and that's going to take some doing. You're going to go in, you're going to make your city applications, you're going to make sure the city is in concert with your reason for changing. You're going to get all of the applications and things in place. To do that, you're also going to put applications in. Now, most cities, when you do a zone change, you have to go through a process. You go to the development, you first submit it to the staff, they review it. You get a development review committee. That's generally going to be all of the city staff. They'll go over the project, tell you about the utilities, the infrastructure, the city support system, all of those things. Then you submit it. Again, once they give you that information, you draw out your first plat and site plan. That gets submitted again to staff. They usually do a 2 to 4 week review. That generally in most cities goes to a planning commission. The planning commission reviews and approves that. That then goes to the city council. The city council then approves and reviews and approves that. And then it will generally go back to staff and development review committee for them to look at it one last time in its full glory, for them to approve it and get it recorded at the county. Now, the good news there is there's a lot of value change in that. Remember, if the basis of highest and best use is if you change the use, you change the value, you want to make sure that you do zone changes that change the value. So if you go through that process, and because it's a little bit lengthy, and because there's a chance that you can get rejected, there's a lot of value in that. So a piece of land that has one zone, you take it to another zone, you do the entire paperwork, you do the engineering, architectural, the submittals, you go through the meetings, you get the approval, you get the neighborhood on board with you, you get that set up and recorded at the county, the value of that property can change significantly. So that is a zone change, taking it from one zone with one set of uses to another zone with another set of uses. And again, you'll want to guarantee that the new zone you're going to has a better use with a better value, and that's generally determined by more density. Number two, a site plan is different than a zone change in that a site plan is typically, like if you've read my book, The Highest and Best Use Real Estate Investing, my #1 Amazon bestseller that I co-authored with Jennifer Brandon Hawkins, the neat thing about that book was it was written about a home that we purchased in a zone. It was an RMF25 zone, which is 25 units to the acre. We simply drew a site plan. A site plan is a plan that would show this property had a 0.63 acre lot and 25 units to the acre. That would mean we'd get about 15 lots. And then what we did was we took that 15 lots site plan and we got that drawn up by an architect and an engineer, and they submitted it to the city. Now, once the city accepted that and started working on that, it didn't mean it was fully approved or fully accepted, but they felt like, hey, this is a starting point and we can start working here, and I didn't need a zone change. Now, on that piece of property, we paid $118,000 roughly for it. We got that site plan done in a couple of weeks and got it submitted to the city within, I'm guessing, 30 days. And then we put it up for sale, and by the time that thing closed, we ended up selling that $118,000 property for about $210,000. And it was a huge difference in value. Now, I finished that work. So I did #1, we did the full zone change paperwork, got everything done. #2, we did the site plan. We got that set up. We got it submitted to the city. Now, in the absence of a zone change, the first one, the example I just gave you was just a site plan start. Now, had I carried that all the way through, that would be a fixer-upper. So this first example I gave you was not a fixer-upper because we didn't take it all the way through. We sold it before then, and I'll kind of tell you what that is in here in just a minute. So the third one is a subdivision. Everybody understands conceptually what a subdivision is, but most people don't understand the enormous value change. So if I take a 10-acre piece of property and I subdivide it into 40 lots, and it's zoned for that, I can draw up a subdivision how those 40 lots will be put together. Now, this is usually pretty hard because those 40 lots are going to have a minimum size, a minimum required frontage amount. That's the amount of frontage that touches the street. They're going to have a minimum required lot size. They're going to have lots on straight streets, lots on corners that have different setbacks. They're going to have lots in cul-de-sacs potentially, which have a different nuance on how the lot sits in concert with the subdivision and the cul-de-sac. And so putting all those things together is a lot of work, and making sure all of the lots hit the base lot requirement, all the lots hit the base frontage, the base setbacks that would, for a home size to be big enough, doing all of that work. And then you go through that same process of getting the process drawn up, submitted to the city planning commission, city council, back to the planning, or back to the city the city staff, and then approval. And some of those subdivisions can take, if you go really quick, they can happen in 80, 90 days. If you're super slow, or the city's difficult, or they're slow, or they're behind, or they're overworked, that can go up to, gosh, I've seen some of those go 1 to 2 years to get a subdivision done. So again, getting a subdivision done in the paperwork realm or the conceptual realm is, we go from a raw piece of land to a piece of land that has approvals for a developer to come in and start putting in the underground, the roads, the curb, gutter, sidewalk, the pavement, the utilities, all of those things. And there's an enormous, enormous value change when you go from that raw piece of land by itself to the raw piece of land with all the paperwork done. And believe it or not, most people don't understand just how significant that difference is. But there's a lot of developers who want to develop who can't find a piece of property or don't have the money or the time to go through the city process. There's a lot of builders who understand how to put roads and curb and gutter and sidewalk in, but they don't understand how to get the process done at the city. So there's a lot of value chains, because a builder or a developer would buy a piece of property that's already platted. And you have a subdivision done and it's recorded, it's platted. So you have all these plot plans, these plats for these properties, and then having that recorded, it's a platted property, and that's an enormous fixer-upper. So that's a fixer-upper as well. Condo conversion can be an entire fixer-upper. And in the paper and conceptual realm, most condo conversions are considered either a full subdivision or a hybrid of a subdivision. You're taking one building with one owner and turning it into one site with 10 owners. So you have a 10-plex, that's one building, one owner, one site. You turn that into a 10-unit condo conversion. That's still one site that's owned by the homeowners association, but it's 10 owners in the building. So you have to subdivide the space in that property there to a condo conversion. If you get that done, even if you were to get the entire condo conversion done at the city, most of the time that requires the entire process. I look for cities regularly that do not require that whole city process. They just say, hey, we want you to do that. We'll give you approval to do it. If you submit a site plan and your CCNRs and homeowners documents, we'll go record it for you and you get started on the work. They want to see that happen. Other cities treat it like it's a full development, full subdivision, and you have to go through the entire process. Now, the good news is, even if you go through that entire process and you haven't done any of the work inside, if you're remodeling or upgrading any of the parts of the building, you haven't done any of that yet, there's an enormous value change in the building. A special use permit, these are kind of hard to get. I just put this in there. I've done this a few times. That's where you go into a zone that has a specific use and specific set of uses, and you give them a one-time example of why you should be given the opportunity to have a different use there. Now, the use permit means typically that if I go in there and I get a use and I put let's say I'm in a neighborhood with 5-acre homes and they all have ranches and horses, and I get a special use permit to put a veterinarian's office there so that I can see all the 200 homes with their horses and have an on-site facility. Now, that's not something you generally want to see in a residential subdivision, but in this case, if this was a subdivision devoted to horses and cattle and animals, and that was the point of the subdivision in the first place, the city might say, hey, we're going to give you that special use permit, and it can only ever be that use. So it's not a zone change. A zone change would allow all the different uses of that new zone. The special use permit only allows the special use. And the neighborhood would obviously be behind that and have to sanction that. So that's a special use permit. And if you do all the work on that and get a special use, those can be extremely valuable. You can sell those as well. So a variance is when you go into a zone. Let's say you're in an R2 zone, and let's say in some cities, when you have an R2 zone, I love looking across an R2 zone, for example, and let's say R2 zone is 10 units to the acre, and there's an acre next door to the property that you're purchasing, and it's got 30 units on it. Well, that's something that's been grandfathered in, because that's obviously more than the use that's currently allowed. Now, you could, if you wanted to, go in and ask for a variance, which is, some cities just do a full zone change. Other cities do what's called a variance. You say, hey, it would make sense for me to carry on the density of the property next door. It's worked out. I'm at the end of the street here. At the end of my street, it goes back into a commercial zone. It's not going to affect any of the homeowners. It's great for the property. It would be detrimental for me to try to put a single family home here. Let's get a variance. And if you went through all that paperwork, it would significantly alter the value. The last one I have here is called an overlay. The overlay being, that's where it's kind of like a variance or a special use permit, and that's just a different word for some cities, where they'll take a zone and they'll overlay additional benefits into it. And I've seen this in a lot of areas, and what'll happen is when I go into the city and ask those important questions, hey, are there any areas of the city you want to see infill or urban renewal or redevelopment done? And they always point places out, and I wait for them, and I listen, and I take notes, and I ask questions. And then when I let them finish, and when it's done, I say, now what are you offering as incentives for me to do that? And so that's where an overlay comes in. A lot of cities will have what's called an overlay, which will say, hey, in this area of the city, this is the base zone, but the overlay, it's a special grant, usually by the city, that allows you to do additional things, and usually without permission. So it might say, hey, in this one area of the R2 zone that's 10 units to the acre, if it's got this red hashing on the zone, then that means you get an extra 5 units to the acre if you do single family ownership instead of apartments. Instead, if you don't do apartments and you do condos and they're single family owned, then we're going to allow you to have 15 units there instead of 10, but it's still the same zone. So an overlay can be fantastic. I've made a lot of money on overlays. But the point here being, if you understand how to change the value or change the use in a property, you significantly change the value at the exact same time. And again, that's called a paper or conceptual fixer-upper. This would be where we finish the entire work. Now, an income fixer-upper is really cool. These are pretty simple. Income fixer-upper is, most people understand that the value of a property is dependent largely upon its net rents. So it doesn't matter how much gross income you have. It doesn't matter how much expenses you have. What matters is how much rent is left over, how much income is left over after all of those things. So if I can raise the net rents, then I raise the value of the building. And most people don't understand that. So there's what's called an income fixer-upper. I call these income fixer-uppers. I buy a building, do whatever I can do to raise the rents. Once the rents are raised, if I can maintain the expenses, or sometimes at the same time I'll drop the expenses, and I do that, and so a lot of times it's without even touching a building, without even doing any physical labor to it. We can raise those rents, and then we can sell the building for a higher profit. And the easy way to describe that is a capitalization rate. Most people have heard of a cap rate or a capitalization rate. What you want to write down if you're taking notes at home here is you take the net rents and you divide that by the value of the building, and that gives you what's called a capitalization rate. Now, if I have a cap rate at 8% and I raise the rents and don't change the expenses, then it's either going to do one of two things. It's going to, if I leave the value of the building the same, it's going to raise the cap rate. I don't want to do that because that would give someone a better deal. What I want to do is, as the net rents raise, I want to raise the value of the building so that I have the same cap. If the market cap rate in a particular area is 8% or 6% or 10%, I've seen them all over the map. 6%, 8%, and I raise the rents, well, it's going to raise the value of the building. So what I'll do is raise that value of the building until I get the same. So if I buy a building at 8% and I raise the rents, then I can raise the value of the building until, so I maintain an 8% cap. And another investor will come along and pay more for the building because it has the same rate of return with the higher rents. And I've done a lot of those where we literally haven't touched the building. And number one here says raise rents on tenured buildings. What I mean by that, guys, is the tenured buildings it's absolutely fantastic in that most people who have tenants and have had them a long time, they'd rather keep the rents low and have their tenants stay forever than raise the rents to the top of the market and have the tenants constantly be moving out. The reason they like that is they don't have to remodel the buildings. Now, the Equity Builder program is a program unto itself. That's a couple-hour breakdown, but essentially what that is I get tenants to pay higher rents than market, and then I give them a monthly credit towards purchasing one of my buildings in the future. So if a guy's paying $700 a month, I might talk him into paying $800 and then giving him a $125 a month credit. And then for as many months as he stays there, I give him a $125 credit that he can use to purchase a condo or a home or do one of those things that I own and use that credit as it's kind of a lease option mentality. The longer he stays and he's a great tenant, the more equity he builds in a property of mine that he purchases in the future. And it might be that we do that in the building right there. So if I buy a building and I say to the tenants, hey, all of you guys pay $100 more a month, I'm going to take a year and do a condo conversion. At the end of the year, if you guys choose to buy it, then you can use the $100 a month, and I'll not only credit you $100 a month towards the purchase of the building, I'll credit you $150 a month. So you'll end up getting part of your down payment set up for the purchase of the building. There's a lot of variations for that. Number 3, seen a lot of variations of remodeling units for higher rents, and there's things you can do to get higher rents. There's covered parking, there's daycares, there's all kinds of things you can put into your facilities that get expensive for the tenants, and they enjoy and use and pay you. So that's number 3. Number 4, another idea, number 3 is internet. You get a really powerful internet on your building, and then have a single pay that's not super expensive, and then you give internet access to all the tenants for a few bucks more a month, and it way pays for the value of what you're paying plus some. Number 4 would be to decrease expenses. There's lots of ways to do this too, from energy efficiency things to changing management companies to doing a lot of different things. But again, you change the rents, you change the value. Those are income fixer-uppers when we do the entire thing. Now, sometimes people ask, I'm just going to take a second on this, how do we get the appraisal on the fixed up property? The appraisal will happen typically when we change the property, change the value of the property, we're going to be using, in most cases, a different appraiser. So if I take a single piece of land and I subdivide it to 40 lots, and I'll probably be using a commercial appraiser at the end of that. But you want to make sure that you can show all the work that you've done through the value. Now, if you can show those visions, you can expose those visions like you see in number 2, a site plan. You want to show a site plan. You want to show that it's a fully changed piece of property, and most appraisers understand that. Now, one that's kind of can be hard for appraisers is, let's say I bought a 20-plex apartment complex and the rents were low by $50 a month, and I simply raise the rents and put the property up for sale. And that makes it hard. The appraiser will come in and say, wait a minute, you just bought this 90 days ago, and now you're asking $200,000 more? What gives? And I'd say, well, here's all my contracts, and we've raised the rents, so it's $1,000 more a month, $50 a month times 20 tenants, $1,000 a month times 12 months. That's an additional $12,000 at the same expenses. Didn't change my expenses. That's raised the value of the building $200,000 at a 6% cap rate. And so go ahead and do that. Now, they understand the income side approach to that. Now, what I'll generally do in a situation like that is I'll figure some type of physical labor to throw in, because that can be a little bit of a reach, and some of those value changes are significant. You might remodel a roof, you might throw in some covered parking, you might do something that justifies some kind of a physical alteration, because that'll make it look better. So, and then what you'll do is provide comparisons. Number 3 here, you don't just want to use a different appraiser. You wouldn't use the same appraiser when you do all the paperwork typically. You expose your vision on a high level, number 2, and then number 3, you get new comparisons. I can't tell you how many times I've had an appraiser show up for an appraisal, and I'll hand them 8, 10, 12 comparables and say, these are strong comparables you're appraising. And then it's very hard for him to go home and say, well, those don't really count, and because that's the same appraisal data he's going to have to use. And if he knows I know my stuff, it makes it very hard for him to go against it. Now, this is a fixer-upper spreadsheet. I want you to take a look at this. Some really neat things here. If you email me, I'll see if I can dig up my spreadsheet that we have and look at sending that to you. But we've got different variations of this. We want to make sure that you get this as many items as you can on here so that there's full expenses done and everything is disclosed. You don't want any hidden expenses when you do fixer-uppers. Now, the fixer-upper costs, these are really simple. I don't do things the normal way. If I think something can sell for $400,000, then I'll consider the price slightly less than that. I do 96%. So in case it sells for a little bit less, I take the acquisition cost, that's the full asking price, minus the fix-up costs, and I'll factor a 20% undisclosed slush fund. What that means, I'm not going to tell anybody what that is. And I'm going to subtract out the holding costs. And on the fix-up costs, if a builder gives me a $50,000 bid, I'm going to, before I buy the project, I'm going to put the numbers in at $60,000 and see if it works, and then not tell the builder that there's a $10,000 slush fund, which is 20% of my $50,000 bid. The holding cost, if I figure it's going to be a 6-month project, then I'll plan for 8, or I'll plan for 9, and I'll make sure the interest works on 8 or 9. So if it takes a few months more or longer, then I have the interest built in and I'm still profitable. So you get your front and back closing costs, and then that will equal your profit or equity position. And again, we want to see at least a 20% on residential. We want to see at least a 30% on land and commercial and retail. And land it's not a bad play on just raw land to do 40%. It gets hard to get to that number, so 30% plus is a good starting place. So here's some ideas for you on the fixer-upper cost. Go ahead and take a look at these. Get lots of references, lots of bids. Don't pick the lowest bid, pick the best bid. Get all of those things in writing, and you want to take a look at those. And again, we talked about your profit determination. You want to make sure that you shoot low, you give yourself plenty of slush, plenty of extra time, get all of those things set up, and away you go. Now, the last thing I want to talk about fixer-uppers today, recommendations for new fixer-uppers. If you're a fixer-upper and you're new at this, I've had a lot of people raise their hand and say, I've never done one, I'm nervous about it, I don't want to do one, I'm nervous. My recommendation for fixer-uppers is if you don't have a fixer-upper done before and you're nervous about it, don't do it. Okay, flip it before you do it, or flix it. We'll talk about that in a second. Or number 3, you partner with someone else. Sell the property to a builder. Number 2, sell the property to a builder and just shadow them. If you happen to be a real estate agent, then make them list it with you, or you won't sell it to them. And then get over there for frequent updates on the process. That's one of the ways I learned how to be a general contractor. I sold so many properties for general contractors. And I told them I want to be in every important meeting that you guys go through. I want to have input on the sites, the lot sizes, the layouts, the building plans, the floor plans, the elevations. I'm going to be selling all this stuff. So you want my opinion. And I learned the entire process. I just learned by watching, and I got paid for doing it for all the properties I was selling. So those are great things there. Now, I want to talk about the third F. And this is probably, if you haven't been around me before, this is probably one that you haven't heard of before. The third F is called the Flixer. Now, the Flixer is something that's better taught by definition. And the Flixer is generally going to be it's a hybrid. So it's not a flip, which we buy low, sell high as quickly as possible without doing anything. It's not a fixer where we buy and sell a bunch of stuff to, do a bunch of stuff to it and complete the work and then sell it. It's actually where we number one, we do a little bit of work and we sell the product. We buy low, sell high, and make at least 60 to 75% of the fixer profit by doing one of the following. Number one, we're going to do a little bit of the work on the outside of the most glaring area, acting like you're going to finish the work, but allow someone else to come in and finish the work for a discount on the price. So that's number one. Number two, or you're going to act like you're going to do some of the work and allow someone to come in and do the work before you get started. You'll do this by creating a vision of the following items: the physical fix-up, the paper or conversion fix-up, the income fix-up or the opportunity that the property affords, or the potential equity profit that comes from being on title and selling for profit or refinancing for an equity position. The third way we could do a Flixer, and this is the way I got my start, so put a star next to number 3 here on your notes, is the way I got started was you can stop your work, you can buy a property, and I'll use an example here in a minute. You can stop your work anywhere in progress for a profit during a fix and flip or a fixer-upper and just sell it for a profit. So I'm going to tell you a couple of quick stories about that because the stories make more sense than the simple explanation here. So back when I started real estate, I wanted to do some short-term stuff, and a lot of people were doing carpet and paint rehab, so I thought I should do them too. And I don't do them anymore, and I don't do them. It's very rare that I do them because I don't do things because other people do. I do things that are profitable. I found ways to make more money than just doing carpet and paint rehabs, and typically a lot less work. So the first thing I'm going to do is tell you this story. So I had a crew. We were buying a lot of vacant and distressed properties and beat down houses. We'd go in and put lipstick on the pig and make it as nice as we could and sell it for a profit. And it was a lot of work, but I was very organized. And so we'd buy a property. I'd have a group of subs. I'd send out the subs. I'd send out an email to the subs and say, hey, here's the next property. Here's the size of the property. Here's the square footage that you're going to be doing. Here's your square footage price that they've given me. So this is your bid. I didn't ask them to give me a bid. I gave them their bid. I said, this is what we're going to do. So it was based on their pricing. And I said, if you have any questions, give me a call. Well, we had done a number of these. And one of the things that I did, and I was excited, and this was because I had sold new homes before, one of the things that new home builders like to do is they like to put their properties up for sale and try to get an offer on them before they're done so that when the house is finished, someone can close on it the next day or week and move in. The longer they sit on that house, the more interest they pay. So just kind of as a habit of doing things that way with so many builders, I sold over 100 new homes for, I think, one builder alone, plus the other builders I work for. I would start buying these fixer-uppers, and I'd close on it, and I'd put it up for sale. And I wouldn't put it up for sale for what I paid for it. I'd put it for sale for what I was going to sell it for. So I'd buy it and then immediately put it up for sale and put a flyer in it, a remodeled house, and I'd list all the things that we were going to do. And I'd say things on there like, hurry and pick your colors. You can make the house yours, pick your cabinets. We're redoing cabinets and all those things. Pick your paint. We're going to be painting the house. Hurry and make an offer so you can have some choices and customize the house to your own specifications. Well, I had this sheetrocker, and the sheetrocker kept going over to my homes, and he would see these flyers. So he didn't ever know what I paid for the property, but he knew what I was selling it for. And the crazy part about this guy was, every time I'd buy a property, send him his bid. Here's your bid. Here's your work. Here's what we're selling it for, guys. Let's get busy. He'd call me on the phone for a couple of houses in a row and say, hey, I want to buy this house and do the work myself. And I say, look, dude, I'm an investor. Go ahead and get in line and do your work. That's fantastic. He goes, well, if you see some extra ones, will you throw them my way? Can I buy them from you? And of course, at that time, I was trying to build this crew as big as I could, so it didn't cross my mind that I'd really want to get a bunch of these and hand them out to people. I wanted to make a profit. And why would I want to make $5,000 or $10,000 assigning it to someone plus a commission? I was a real estate agent and broker at that time, when I could make the whole profit plus the real estate commission, just doing it myself. So I just said, dude, get back to work. And the next house, he did the same thing. Next house, he did the same thing. And finally, I believe it was on the fourth house, he finally says to me, look, dude, I want to do some deals. Can't you help me out here? Please let me do a few deals. I want to buy a house. And I said, okay. I just finally said, okay, make an offer. I finally thought, you know what? He's not going to make an offer, or he'll make an offer so low that I'll just reject it. Well, I couldn't believe it. This first house that I had purchased for $71,000, and we had listed it for $149,900, I believe. And there was a bunch of work. It was in horrible shape. In fact, we had planned on probably $30,000 to $35,000 of work. With this $35,000 of work, what was going to happen was we were going to remodel almost the entire house, put a new roof, new porch, new front. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff. And so I was going to be in at about 110. I figured it'd sell 145, 150. Then I'd pay some commissions and closing costs. I figured I'd get out of it around 135, or excuse me, 138. And I'd make a $30,000 profit roughly. And I'm thinking, hey, that's pretty cool. Well, as we started this property, it was a fairly good market. And so this guy comes in and offers me $103,000 for the property. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Hold on a second. He wants me to walk away with a $32,000 profit, and that's not far from the profit I was hoping to make. I mean, if I was in at 105 and I sold it for 149.9 and paid some closing costs, I'd be in at 142. That's about a $37,000 profit. And I thought to myself, I can still make $35,000 here without doing any of the work. Now, we had started a couple of things, so there's a little bit of work done. We had gotten the new windows in. They're dual pane vinyl windows. We took out the old windows, and there's a few other things that we had done. And I was only in the house a few $1,000, and I'm looking at making close to $30,000 from just walking away. And I just sat there and scratched my head and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I can't even believe this. So what I realized was the $30,000 in work that I was going to do, since he was a subcontractor, he could probably get the materials on that for $12,000 to $15,000, and the rest of it was going to be sweat equity for him. Now, he would also make his portion of the profit for the bid for the sheetrock. So that $30,000. So if he bought the property at 103 and put 15,000 in, he'd be in at 118,000, and the property would still be worth 149.9, and the net on that would be worth 140. And I'm sitting there looking at that, saying, this guy's going to make $22,000, and or 20 grand, and I'm going to make 30 grand. And why would he do that? Why would he do that? Well, the cool part about this was he got to use his trade skills, and instead of making a couple $1,000 profit on the sheetrock portion of the bid, this guy ended up doing this deal and making 5 or 6 times that at $22,000. And I got most of my profit. So I'm like, I have got to bottle this. Now there's a couple other stories that relate to this. Excuse me. But one of the stories was, as I started doing subdivisions, there were builders that would attend the subdivision meetings. So I'd be at the planning commission with my 20 lot subdivision, and I'd do my presentation and get approved by the planning commission. And then a builder would approach several, and sometimes more than one, would approach me afterwards and say, I'd like to buy your lots. So these builders were having trouble finding lots, and they thought, I'll go to the city where I want to build in, and I'll start trying to buy the lots before they're even legal lots. I want to get my name in the hat. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Well, one guy came along and offered me, he said, I want to buy your plat. And I said, buy my plat? What do you mean? And I hadn't done a bunch of them, so I've never had this experience before. He goes, well, you just got your planning commission approval. It was unanimous. The city council is going to like this. I've been to a lot of these meetings. I want to buy, how much for you to just walk away right now? I want to buy it from you. How much to walk away? And he pulled out this formula that showed me how much he felt the lots were worth, fully finished. He actually had a copy of my subdivision, because those are public and you can get them from the city. He had all the lots. He goes, here's the future value of the lots. If you take out this many thousands of dollars for the curb, gutter, sidewalk, infrastructure, etc., here's the site improvements. And then here's what the net value of the lots are. And I'm willing to offer you just a little bit less than that, just because I would have to finish the subdivision. I'd have to finish the process here, get it approved through the city. It's going to take me another 6 or 8 weeks. Take me several $1,000s to finish out your fees. But here's the price I want to offer you. And it was, again, 60-70% of the money I was going to make from buying the raw land and doing the subdivision process. So I'm sitting here thinking, do I want to walk away right now and make 70% of the profit, or do I want to do all the work and make 100% of the profit? And there were some reasons why I didn't want to do all the work. The first one was, if you get a subdivision recorded, you have to put a bond up, and bonds can be very expensive to bond the work. And so I'm sitting there looking at that going. The other thing was, I had a lot of things going. I had a lot of deals going. And I tell you, when you get 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 deals going at a time, somebody comes in and wants to offer you 70% of your profit and walk away. You get to walk away with a lot of the work done. This guy had cash too, which was not always the case. This guy could fund me out, get me done, and close and finish the project. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. So what I learned through the process of fixer-uppers was that there's a huge appetite, first of all, to do fixer-uppers. The second thing is, there's a lot of people that want the end product, but they can't find it. I mean, think of a builder in a great market. It's very, very hard to come by lots. And people that own raw land want to hold it, so as the market goes up, they can sell it for more money. So if you have access to projects and you know to the right people to talk to, you can make enormous profits doing this. And we ended up calling them a flixer. So it's not a flip, it's not a fixer. If it's a hybrid, it's a flixer. So here's the process. You find the property, understand what the fix-up will be, whether it's physical or paper conversion or income. I'm going to make sure this works as a fixer-upper through the fixer-upper formulas. Write the offer, get the inspections, close on the property, put the property back up for sale. You remember the foundation to success. That's what we do here. And number 8, you want to market it as a flixer. Now here's the difference. Here's the mindset. So I would, instead of putting that little house up for sale as a finished property, so let's say I bought that house for $70,000 instead of listing it at $149,900 and saying, hey, rehabbed home, I would change it and say, hey, remodel in process, pay full price when it's done at $149,900, or buy now for a significant discount to do the work yourself and finish for a profit. So basically I'm saying here, hey, get a hold of this if you want to do this. Now, because there were a lot of contractors, subcontractors, do-it-yourselfers, remodelers, I'd write an ad in all the places I'd advertise, something like this. So imagine I bought this $70,000 house, I closed on it $71,000. The next day, I put it up for sale in all these places, and it says something like this: attention contractors, subcontractors, do-it-yourselfers, handymen, remodelers, developers, fixer-upper in process. Pay full price when the work is done, get a beautifully remodeled house, or buy now for a significant discount and do the work for yourself for a profit. Get some sweat equity in it. And I couldn't believe how many people started coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, I want to finish this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And what would happen is, as I started progressing along the work, I told them I'd buy it for a significant discount, and their significant discount was always less significant than my significant discount. And I could usually get 50 to 80% of my profit, more usually in that 60 to 75% range, and let them finish out the work. Now, if they're a different project, like a condo conversion, you could buy a 10-plex, put it up for sale, put in all the structure, all the remarks, attention, contractors, subcontractors, developers, investors, condo conversion in process, listing represents full finished value, buy now for a discount and remodel for yourself in the future for a profit. Buy now for a discount and finish work for yourself for a profit sweat equity position. And you can market them that way. So this was an absolute send to me, because a lot of these projects, we started doing a lot of these Flixers where I would start with a fixer-upper and it would never finish. It just would never finish. And we got bad enough where we started fixer-uppers and we just expected them to sell. So we got a little slow on the work. We'll talk to you about that here in a minute. But you want to make sure that you progress through. We'll talk about that more. But so number 9, you want to start with some easy cosmetic work yourself. So if nobody writes an offer immediately, you're going to start the work and you're going to make it look like you really are going to act like you're finishing out the work. And I don't mean just act like it. Get after it. So here's the thing. If nobody happens to buy it at that state, you can still make your finished fixer-upper your profit. And there's no reason, if you wait around and end up having to finish the house, all you did was cost yourself some interest. And the longer it's on the market, the less people want to tend to pay for it. Now, there's a couple other ways to do Flixers too. So my favorite way is to price it as a finished product and then tell people you can give a massive discount for them buying it now and finishing for a profit. Now, I've done a few here where you look at number 2, I don't know why those all say 9 next to them. That's fantastic. So the second 9 is you can price it at a lower amount. So imagine the $71,000 house, and let's say I listed at $1,099 and say this includes the windows, a new roof, a new front porch, and the house stripped out. And when that work gets done, we're going to raise the price to reflect the next phase of work. So you finish that price, you next list it at $129.9 or $135 and say this price is going to include the paint and this, that, and the other. And when we get to that, we're going to raise it to the final price of $149.9. I prefer just to do the first price, the final price first. And you don't want to keep raising the prices a bunch of times, because a lot of times people will watch those, especially like a fixer-upper, and they'll try to come back and start you at the beginning price. My favorite technique there is just to list it at the finished price and then say there's a massive discount. Now, if you get a ways into that work, go back and change the terminology in your listing and take out the get a massive discount and finish the work yourself, and change that to get a discount and then get a slight discount as you start to finish the work. Now, again, the point of a Flixer is to try to sell for most of your profit with the least amount of work possible. If it doesn't sell, then it's just a fixer-upper. You're going to finish ahead, and you already qualified as a fixer-upper. It already works as a fixer-upper. The numbers work as a fixer-upper. It's a fantastic benefit that way. Now, again, we created the marketing. The marketing here is to suggest that we're going to take the property and expose the future vision. You want to expose that future vision, and you want to start making sure that people understand what's coming. And then you want to progress as aggressively as possible. You don't want to do the work on the project any less aggressively. You want to do it just as aggressively as you can. So the marketing, you begin marketing any property that you have, that you get under contract with an assigned clause, or even with a listing agreement. And those are things you can check on with your local state laws. But again, the marketing portion, number 1, create the vision of the Flixer either physically or with paper conversion fixer-upper options. You'll use the regular marketing tools that all the investors use, the on-site stuff, the LoopNet, the Craigslist, the different local online sites at work, those types of things. And you want to get those. The next one that I've learned that's a massive, massive, massive cash flow for me is if you Google your city and then Google Home Builders Association. So if I live in Denver or Dallas or Salt Lake City or Washington, D.C. or New York or whatever city I'm in, you can Google New York City Home Builders Association. And it'll generally pull up a home builders roster. And you can get that roster in those cases. Sometimes you have to do a few names at a time, but gosh, if you hire a temp, or an IT person, even from India. My goodness, you can have one of these guys crawl the site pretty easily and get all of that information into an Excel spreadsheet for you. And then if you start a 10-unit condo conversion, or you buy a piece of land that you're going to turn into 20 lots, or you start doing some of these things, and when you put the property back up for sale right after you close on it, and you imagine emailing 500 home builders and saying, hey, I've got a twin home lot here in process. It'll be done, we're estimating the next 90 to 120 days. Buy it now and finish the work for yourself for a discount of the future value, or pay full price later. But contact me and let me know what you're interested in doing. You'd be surprised how many people will reach out to you and say, my goodness, how do we do that? Let's get that building. Let's get that project. We want to get that deal. Because again, a lot of times they have trouble finding inventory. And you'd be surprised how many of those guys will invest with you too, by the way. And you'll be surprised how many of those guys, you're doing something different than other people doing, then they want to be a part of what you're doing. So you can ask them the following questions. These are great questions that you like to do. Now, when I get a project and I start interviewing builders, I would say, hey, would you like to bid on the work for the fixer-upper that I'm going to do? So when I did fixer-uppers, what I do is I'd send it to a builder, a list of 50 builders. Hey, I've got this fixer-upper. And the first thing I started doing was trying to find contractors who'd run my crews. I didn't want to run anymore. I wanted to hire someone out and still make as much profit as possible, but do other things. So I'd get these contractors in and say, hey, we'd like to bid on the work for the fixer-upper that I'm going to do. And here's the work. Now, and then I asked, do you know anyone that might like to partner with me on this deal for a profit instead of just doing the work? And most builders, I'd say 7 out of 10 would say, yeah, absolutely, I'd like to partner on that. What does that mean? And obviously what you're doing is you're raising some capital from this. I'd have builders come in and say, look, I'll put some money in the deal and help you with the work if I can get the property afterwards. And there's a hunger for projects and inventory. Then the last thing I'd say, do you know anyone that would like to buy this property from me at a major discount so they could do the work themselves, make their wages in a very handsome profit? So we would actually contact builders. So I'd send a list of 50 builders, and let's say 6 of them respond. This is the questionnaire that I'd go through with them. And oftentimes I'd be able to raise capital right out of this discussion right here. If you got some money, then I'll consider using you over the other 12 people that contacted me, or 15 or 6 or 3 or 12 or whatever it was on that go round. Now, most home builders associations, they can have thousands of members. So imagine sending that out, and you could create a massive, massive interest in your property. So that's marketing. Now, you want to do step 3 1 or 2 times and watch it. And again, if you have never done a fixer-upper or a flixer, you could do step 3 1 or 2 times and watch or shadow the person that purchased the property from you and learn to do it yourself as you list and sell the property and get that sold. 5, you can make sure that anytime you sell a property that you get a listing of the property, and this is for realtors, of the finished product from whomever buys the property from you, and that's a fantastic benefit. Now, on pricing the flixer, we kind of talked about this property, we kind of talked about pricing the flixer, so I'm going to gloss over this a little bit. Again, the pricing the flixer for me, there's 2 ways to do it. Way number 1 is you put the property up for sale as a finished product. So that finished product will have a future value. So I buy the house as low as I can. I want to sell it as high as I can. I list it as high as I can, what I think what it'll sell reasonably. Now, I usually don't list it for the very top dollar. You'll find, if you're not a realtor, if you are a realtor, a comparative market analysis never produces one number. It might produce a range. Now, this house is worth, gosh, $280 to $290. Well, I'm going to probably, if that's the case, I'm probably, instead of listing it at $289.9, I'm probably going to list it at $279.9. I'd like to get offers right out of the gate. I love to move my inventory. I love to do lots of deals. There's nothing worse than having a couple of projects sit around that never go anywhere. That drains your energy. It drains your enthusiasm. Again, option 1 is let's put it to the future value and say, here's what it's worth fixed up. Buy now for a discount and do the work yourself for a remodel. That's a fantastic benefit. Option number 2 is to 1, 2, 3 times, if it's a stepped process like a city zone change, we're going to do a full architectural engineering and drawing for the site and maybe some renderings for the buildings themselves. That's step 1. You can price it to that point and let someone buy it there. Then you can price it to approval from the planning commission. You can do approval from the city council, and then you can price it to approval, full approval and recording of the plat. Most of you may know that when a subdivision gets done, It's not completely done until it goes and gets recorded at the county as a new subdivision. So that's done in that case. So my preference, again, is to price it high. And I say high, meaning at the end price. We still want to be conservative, but at the end price. And then allowing people, as I do more work, they'll start seeing more value in the property, and they'll make an offer and finish it themselves for the Flixer. So this is kind of the process that we went through with this stuff here. Again, you can get a lot of this stuff done. Great example. I want to go through a couple of other examples for you on some Flixers, because the Flixers are really, really valuable for a couple of reasons. So the first reason they're valuable is this example right here. Now, many of you have heard a story, because this is just such a clean Flixer story, and I've done a lot of different Flixers. But this Flixer story is just amazing, these next couple. This was a deal that we did in Las Vegas. We found an area where the city allowed for a zone change. There was kind of I wouldn't call it a war zone, but there was an area that was a little rough. And the city wanted so badly to have new developments done there that they offered a zone change from R2, which was 9 units to the acre, to R3, which is 18 units to the acre, simply if you paid an application fee and submitted a site plan. So we went in, found a piece of property, the student and I that I partnered with, and we did several of these in the neighborhood. And we did this, and the example here was this piece of property had enough space for about 5 units under the current zone, but we went in and paid the $250 fee, and they required at this $250 application fee that there was a site plan. So they could just generally see how it might lay out for the neighborhood sake. It didn't have to be anything significant. They just want to see how it would lay out. So we did a site plan here, and that's a 2-story building right there. There's 5 units over the top of 5 units. And we did 5 2-bedroom units, 5 1-bedroom units. And one of the reasons we did the 1-bedroom units is they required less parking spaces. We were a little tight on parking on that deal. But we paid the $250, did this little site plan that cost us, I'm guessing, less than $2,000, and then submitted that to the city. And my partner, I happened to be in another part of the country, my partner just went to the planning commission and stood there and said, this is what we want to do. We think it's a great use for the city. We're going to clean up the area. It's fantastic. And they approved it. And they said, that's fantastic. You got it. Do it. And we changed the value of 3 properties within, 600 yards of each other, and significant, almost doubled the value of the properties with very little work. And all 3 of them sold almost immediately to builders that couldn't find inventory. So a builder, imagine being a builder out there looking, you can't find something to build on. You're not making a living. You can't build on something and sell it. So we put these up for sale, and imagine a builder having nothing or getting near the end of another project and pick up 10 units here that they can build. That's a great project for them. And because we'd sell it for a little bit of a discount off of its future value, it also make a little bit of the development profit as well. So it was a win-win deal. We did a lot of those. Now here's one from Phoenix. I did a bunch of these in Phoenix as well. This is one where we bought a long, slender lot, and nobody had built on it. Very difficult with the lot. You notice right here, it's kind of a bowling alley. This is the lot right here. And nobody built on this property because it was a very hard property to schematically lay out. And I was never worried about schematics. I've always been able to think through things. So we did 6 units again, 3 over 3. So you got 3 basement units across here, 3 upstairs units, and then the parking was here in the front. And they were a little bit nervous about this because of the fire engines, but we had a drive-through access. This went all the way through to the next street. So a fire truck didn't have to turn around. It could come up here and fight the fire if it needed to, and then just drive through to the other street. So it took care of a lot of the problems there, and the city was thrilled to death with this. We bought the property, just did this little zone, this plat on it, and then put it back up for sale, and it sold immediately and was a nice profitable deal for us. Here's another example of one just around 2 streets away from the one I just showed you. There are these 2 properties that were for sale together. They had been for sale for a long time. We ended up going in and purchasing both of them, and simply drew. This was a hard one too because it was very narrow. It was hard to get the proper setbacks on a building and the parking. So we just went in, and I think we ended up getting 29 units on this. We drew a site plan how 29 units might work and submitted it to the city. They accepted it and said, hey, this is a start. Let's get going. And then we immediately sold this for a profit. And the numbers on this were crazy. I think we bought this one for $520 and ended up selling it for $830,000 and did, I'm guessing, less than $20,000 worth of engineering work on this and other things. And it was an absolutely amazing deal. Now, if you look on this smaller map, these two properties right here are also represented right here. Now, that third property I just showed you from before was right down here. Same neighborhood, that long, skinny bowling alley. And then we did this one over here as well. Now, this one was kind of nice because it had a little more expensive. This had a fiveplex, or excuse me, it was a fiveplex on an acre. And we knew that that zoning in that area would allow for, I think it was like, gosh, 25 units to the acre. I remember, but it was a high density. They really wanted to clean up this neighborhood. So we tore out this old fiveplex, and that was the goal. And we drew how 28 units would sit on this lot right here, put it back up for sale, and almost doubled our money on that one too, because it had an enormous profit potential. Nobody could really see how these would work, but I tell you, builders aren't necessarily the best at looking at a piece of land and saying, I can see how this project would work, especially on properties that are a little bit troubled. What a builder is good at is if you draw a site plan for them and elevations and say, here's your building, here's your plans, here's how the site looks, go to it. Almost every builder can do that. And so if you do that portion of the work, instead of doing the entire subdivision, you can make enormous profits doing that. So that's something to significantly consider in these Flixers. Now, had we finished any of these projects right here, we would have made more money. I'm not going to lie to you. If you have a 29 unit property, we made, I'm guessing, about $300,000 on that. We would have made the same $300,000 plus if we built the 28 condos and even made $20,000 a unit on that. That would have been another $560,000. This project right here could have been close to $900,000 of profit. And when I tell this story in class in front of a live audience, where I'm sitting in front of people, there's always hands that go up in the room and that say, why would you make $300,000 when you could make $800,000? What are you teaching me here? And the answer is very easy. Well, I ask all the time, what do you want to do? You want to make $300,000 in 2 months? You want to make $800,000 in 12 to 18 months? Which one's better? And then they start thinking about it a little bit differently. And then you ask the follow-up questions to that, which are, do you want to make $300,000 in 3 or 4 months? Do you want to make $500,000 in 7 or 8 months? Do you want to make $800,000 in 12 to 18 months? And most of the room, when I ask that, will pick one of the values. And then I say, now, what if you got 10 of these going right now? What if there's 10 of those going? What do you want to do then? And they start to see, oh, gosh, if I got 10 of them going, then it makes some sense to do some of them quick for most of the good chunk of the profit. Makes sense to do longer parts on others to make most of the profit. And it makes sense to finish a couple of them and make all the profit. And then when you get a couple of them finished, it makes a lot of sense to keep a couple of those and cash flow them with tenants and rent them out for a while. So that's the benefit of the foundation of success, is you can really start to take a look at these properties and say to yourself, my goodness, and the answer comes back to, so how do you know which one's better? I ask the class, which one's better? You want 300, 500, 800, which one's better? And the answer is yes. The right answer is yes. They're all good. So what I like to do is put the property up for sale. And if it sells, I sell it. If it doesn't sell, I don't sell it. And I finish the work. And I've had a lot of properties where I do some of the work and it sells. I've had other properties where I do most of the work and it sells. I've had other properties where I do all the work and it sells. And I've had other properties where I do the work and it doesn't sell, and I refinance it and I keep apartments. It's how you build a 650 apartment portfolio in part. So absolutely fantastic benefit that way. Now this is the last one, and a lot of these Flixers we do are on problem lots. We get really good deals. This was a property you can see here off in the side. It's really hard to see. This is the Puget Sound in the Seattle area. And this was a very sloped lot. It doesn't look like it. From up here all the way down, it dropped, I don't remember, 20, 30 feet. It was quite a drop. Maybe it was 20 feet. And so it was very narrow. And with the parking requirements, people weren't able to to get the value there with the number of units that they wanted. So this property sat for sale for a long time. We came in and said, gosh, we know how to site plan that, and that's how to lay out the plan. And what we did is, you'll notice these two lines right here represent the lot lines. So you can see this building takes up almost the entire lot, but the parking's underground. So we thought, instead of, if you had to build a retaining wall at one side and bring in a bunch of fill dirt and compact it so you had a flat lot, or you had to try to plan how to take a flat lot and have a very sloped subdivision, those are difficult things for a developer and builder. So what we did was, on the top end, we just excavated down. Our plan was to excavate down and then excavate down into a basement parking garage that would sit under the building. And then it would run across, so the parking in the basement was flat. We would dig down far enough so that building sat in the ground enough that it ended up being a flat basement for parking. And then our building sat straight up. So on one end, the entire parking structure was covered, and you just looked like the building sitting on the ground. From the other end, you could see the full parking structure exposed, and that's the part where you drove in and came out. But then you've got this beautiful 12-unit condo project on the top, and then look at this patio up here. This was a common patio for people to enjoy, and again, it looked over the Puget Sound here in Washington, which was a huge seller. We bought this immediately, put it up for sale, and this was a very profitable project. Very good deal. And part of this came from our ability to do site planning, and also part of it came from us getting a fantastic deal and understanding the project there. So again, Flixers are powerful for a number of reasons. Again, we can learn to get the fixer-upper process started, watch others finish it so we can do it ourselves while we list the property for the person doing the fixer-upper. We can make 60 to 70% of the fixer-upper profit without doing the work. Now again, don't plan on not doing any of the work. You want to go in and say, I'm doing all of the work, I'm doing it as fast, as hard as I can, and as more aggressive as you are with that work, more pricing, the more benefit you're going to get from the pricing. Let me give you an example. So I'd have maybe a builder call in one of my subdivisions, and at the night of the planning commission, I got a call, and builder calls and says, hey, I see this is for sale. It says you'll take a massive discount. What's a massive discount? And I said, well, it's not that massive anymore. Why is that? I'm literally walking out of the city right now. I just got the planning commission approval for the plat. So that's a big marker. And I'm going to be at the city council in 4 weeks. We've got some very minor revisions. And once I get that done and a few other things, you're going to pay full price. So if you want to get this, any kind of a discount, then you're going to have to buy it right now. And you're going to have to be real serious about it. And if you don't, if you think about it for 2 weeks and I already submit it, and I'm just going to wait and get it to the city council, and you can pay even a higher price then. Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna bring in an offer tomorrow. I'm gonna talk to my people. I'll bring in an offer tomorrow. And so we'd make them do that. Now, I typically wouldn't stop the process there. If that guy came in the next day and had a 7-day cash offer, then I'd probably take that offer and stop my subdivision. The guy says, I want to close in 6 months and I want 90 days to do my due diligence before you get my $1,000 earnest money, I wouldn't accept that deal. So I'm not going to stop my project. I'm going to go full steam ahead. And I'm going to tell people, look, the more I get done, the more you're going to pay. So be quick about it. And that's the other fun thing, is if I know I can finish the work and get a big profit, I don't need to work with these guys. And one of the things that makes people do what you want on pricing and terms and those types of things is your inability to have, or the lack of need you have to work with them. So, hey, I'm just anxiously engaged here and doing this, and you're getting in my way. So I just wasted 10 minutes where I could be finishing my project. So send me an offer or don't, but the full price is there, and you can pay that when the project's done if you want. And these guys are like, man, this guy's moving, he's hopping, he's going. I better get on the train and get the offer written. This allows you, by the way, to do more deals with less resources. And you go back to that property where we bought that 5-plex on an acre in Phoenix, and you say, hey, if I had to come up with $800,000, if I had to come up with the 400 and change, I think we paid $460, $480 for that property, if I remember right, and pay for that, and then I had to pay to tear it out, and then I had to pay to do all the site planning, and I had to pay to build 29 condos, and I had to get loans, and that's a big project that takes a lot of money. Now, if I've got a handful of those going, it makes sense to sell some of them for profits and use that money towards the projects that you're still doing and you can just do more stuff with less resources. We can do these types of deals with much quicker. These deals are much quicker than fixer-uppers. I'd say there's nothing more exciting for you as a new investor to get a few things done quickly. Get a few things done in a fast format, really quickly. This process teaches us how to draw partners, clients, additional transactions, and investors to us. So I tell you, if enough builders see me do this enough times, these builders, they'll start calling you. They'll start calling you. You get a call every couple of weeks. Hey, Mike, this is Joe from Joe's Construction. Anything on the burner I should know about? Anything going on I should know about? Anything? And by the way, I saw this property over here that looks like something you do. Why don't we work together on it? I got guys bringing me properties. I got guys bringing me deals. And then I turn it into guys bringing me money. So once I got a good group of builders to work with, then you start saying to these guys, you get 6 of them, say, hey, come over to my conference room tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I'm going to show you this new project. And that's the only time I have available in the next couple of days. Well, they show up and there's 5 other builders there. So there's 6 builders in the room. So it's me and 6 builders. And I lay the plans out and show them all. Say, hey, I'd like to do this with one of you guys. And what I'm looking for is partners. Somebody wants to come in and be a partner. There's a chance for profit. You'll certainly get the project and control it. I want you to come in and fund part of it. I'm funding most of it. You come in and fund part of it, and then you can buy the project outright from me. And we started using that to raise capital. And a lot of these guys are like, I'm in, dude. Sign me up. I'm in. I don't have any problem doing something like that. So you want to think about Flixers that way. And again, the Flixers is you buy it, you act like you're going to do a fixer-upper, you do most of the work, and then you sell it for a profit. Or you do some of the, a little work as possible for most of the profit, and you sell it for a profit. So that's a Flixer. Now, just a quick review. The flips, fixers, and Flixers. Flip, buy low, sell high, little, no work, no effort. Just you bought it cheap, you got a great deal on it somehow. Good for you. You turn around and sell it for a profit. That's a flip. Fixer-uppers, where you buy something and you see the benefit, the future value, which in our case is generally a use change. I'm not going to say you can't do a carpet and paint deal, but gosh, why do all of that brain damage for such small profits when there's so many other things you can do? But you buy the property, you do all the work to it, and then you sell it as a fixed up property. It's fixed up either physically, it's fixed up income-wise, or it's fixed up paper-wise or conceptually, like we've talked about today. And then the Flixer simply is, you buy the project intending to do a fixer-upper, literally intending to do the fixer-upper, and then you stop somewhere along the line and sell for most of your profit, not having done all of your work. And the goal there is to get as much of the profit as you can with as little as work as you can. And you got to be real careful there. Again, don't let your foot off the gas. Go as fast as you can and get that stuff done. So those are the 3 F's. Make sure you get involved. Start looking for properties. Send me some deals. Let's get going. This is a party going on over here. Let's get you involved. This is Mike Watson. I'm out.